Conversation with Ron MacLean.
Welcome to In Conversation. Today on the show, the president, CEO, and a director of Empire Company Limited, Michael Medline, and the chairman of the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club, Bob Nicholson. And you say, well, how do those two sync up? They are in vastly different careers, but in a sense, they do share one thing. Each has enjoyed golden hours. Let's start with Bob Nicholson. As president of Hockey Canada from 1998 through to 2014, Bob was at the helm of all our programs, and all Team Canada's during his watch won 44 gold medals, an incredible total. And in fact, when Bob retired on April 5th, 2014, it was right after the Sochi Olympic Games when the men's and women's teams had captured gold. And he said, stock markets, gold prices are high. It's a good time to get out. So that's his golden hours. As for Michael Medline, his involves the Belmont Sobeys in Northeast Edmonton. Michael's in charge of 1,500 grocery stores under different umbrellas all across of Canada. But in the case of Northeast Edmonton, the Belmont Sobeys is where Jerry McLaughlin, an owner-operator, started the idea of having a golden hour from 7 a.m. to 8 in the morning. Seniors or citizens who were vulnerable or had issues, they would get to shop ahead of the rest. And Michael heard about this idea, and he quickly instituted it in all 1,500 grocery stores. And before you know it, it was de rigueur. Everybody in Canada was experiencing a golden hour for shopping. So there you have it. We're going to see the retelling of retail in this segment. We are going to find out when we may go from isolation to ice-elation. A little bit of grocery, a little bit of Gretzky. We're going top shelf.
Hi folks, I'm here at the Belmont Sobeys in Northeast Edmonton with Jerry McLaughlin, who's the owner and general manager as well.
Owner-operator.
Owner-operator. And I just wanted to drop by to thank Jerry for having started the wave of golden hours for senior shopping during the COVID-19 crisis.
I'm so proud to say that the president and CEO of Sobeys, Michael Medline, he saw it, they've actioned it coast to coast in Sobeys. It's a program across Canada in Sobeys. I'm so proud, and I think of my grandpa when I talk about it. He would be really proud.
And here now are the men behind those golden hours, Michael Medline and Bob Nicholson. Bob, I'll come to you and your friendship in just a moment. Michael, you never dreamt that you'd be leading an army, putting their health at risk to serve. And I just can't even imagine what you're going through as running 1,500 grocery stores across Canada. But you and Bob Nicholson, you've spent much time together. So tell the viewer about that.
Yeah, I mean, we were great supporters when I was at Canadian Tire with Hockey Canada. And now we're great supporters of Hockey Canada at Sobeys. And Bob and I had the good fortune of getting together and putting that partnership together. But we really became close. We were both in Sochi when Bob led the teams for Hockey Canada to both gold medals. And especially after that women's gold medal game, Bob and I had a beer together. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone happier than Bob Nicholson that night.
Go on about that, Bob.
You know what? That was a special game, Ron, in Sochi. You know, we were losing to the U.S. team in the final minutes, and as I said to you before, the whole team was calm. They were confident that they could win. Not many people thought they could, and how they pulled that game out was so spectacular. Meant so much to Canada and so much to the women's players who, you know, we'd won in Vancouver, but then to go to Russia and do it again and do it in the fashion that they did, it was probably the most exciting hockey game I've ever watched.
Honestly, these women's gold medal games, Pyeongchang, Vancouver included, are among the greatest spectacles you'll ever witness. So Kevin Dineen, his dad, Bill, was an absolute mentor to so many in hockey. But what he did in 2014, that timeout late to get the equal, well, you tell me what he did.
Yeah, you know what, Ron, I haven't told you. Bill Dineen coached me in juniors, and that's how we, you know, I knew Kevin when he was a young boy in Denver at the time, and that's Kevin had called me to coach the Spangler Cup, and that's how we got. We started talking about women's hockey, and then he coached that team. And he had a play that he wanted to do at the end of the game. He rolled it out to the players on the bench, and the players had such trust in Kevin that they went out and executed it and, you know, delivered the gold medal. I think the other key thing that Kevin told me after the game, he said, Bob, with under 2 minutes left, there was no panic on the bench. And I give a lot of credit to him for that. But I also heck of a lot of credit to the leadership on that team, because they had really focused that they were going to win that gold medal, and there was no panic, and they delivered gold for Canada.
Michael, you spoke to us at Rogers about, I'd say 3 months ago at a town hall, and explained your love of sport and the emotional connection between it and some of the things that you do in a leadership role. So just maybe a favorite Olympic memory or your favorite sporting memory.
Yeah, I've had so many great. I'm not as good a hockey player as Bob or you, but I've had a lot of great memories being a fan, and I've been lucky to be at a lot of events. And I'd say that obviously I was at the Kawhi shot last year, and to see that happen and to see Canada go crazy over sports meant something, and it showed how we can unite as a country. And through this whole terrible coronavirus thing, we have 123,000 teammates across the country, and how they've interacted with Canadians and how great Canadians have been to my teammates, bringing them snacks, sending them notes, thanking them in the store. And so that power of sport to unite our country and bring people together and excite them is really why we're such great partners of sports teams across the country at Sobeys. And it really resonates with our people, because a lot of what sports teams do, we try to do. And so it's very exciting.
So we told the story in the preamble of Jerry McLaughlin at Belmont in Edmonton, and he created that first hour of the day for seniors and those vulnerable. What are some of the other highlights? And I'll just back up a moment. As I said, you've become kind of the commander of an army, risking themselves and their health for us. You didn't sign up for that job. So how have you done that?
Yeah, usually in grocery, you're trying to thrill your customers and make some money and beat your competitors or crush your competitors usually. And suddenly we were in a situation where something was new to us, where people's health and safety and lives were on the line. And it was a new ball game, completely new ball game. And so for the first 4 or 5 weeks, our people hardly slept, because all they could think about was keeping everyone safe, keeping our teammates safe, keeping our customers safe. And so we would call all over the world, and we try to figure out what is the best way to keep people safe. And we heard about something you guys are familiar with, plexiglass. And we heard in Italy that a grocer was trying plexiglass out. Before that call was done, we made the call to order as much plexiglass as we could around the country and have it installed. We began installing it 24 hours after having the idea. And that's nothing to do with me. That's the great real estate team we have, the great people we have in our stores. And within about 2 to 3 weeks, all of our stores across the country had that protective equipment. And to see our people on the ground everywhere getting recognized is something special. I mean, the Prime Minister, the premiers, the mayors are thanking grocery workers. We never thought of ourselves as essential before. And to be put in a place where our people are really heroes was something special.
It is. I want to hug them every time, the cashier or the person that's providing me with service at a grocery store. And so kudos to them and our love to them. Bob, do you want to pick up on that? And if you will, I would morph into what came early in your situation with COVID-19 was the untimely loss of Colby Cave, and the Oilers, rallied around the Cave family. And again, just how we connect in this horrible situation became so amplified for a heartsick bunch of hockey friends of the Cave. So maybe touch on both, if you would.
Yeah, it was so tough. Colby, in fact, Keith Gretzky had talked to Colby that night, just talking about his training programs, and he had a real good workout. And, he certainly wasn't feeling very well when he went to bed that night. And then what happened to him there was just tragic. And, thoughts and prayers go out to Emily and his mom and dad. But I can tell you, I'm so proud of the leadership of our team, people like Connor McDavid, Nuge, their wives and girlfriends, how they've connected to Emily and Wendy Tippett. We really showed we were a family, and we got right out in front of it and started the Colby Cave Memorial Fund. There's been tremendous amount of support to that. And, we're still, I talk to Emily once a week. She's going to move to Edmonton, which is just because she feels there's such support from the Edmonton Oilers players and team. So that really is great to see. Colby was a guy that had to work hard, never was drafted to the National Hockey League, played up and down from Providence to Boston, was doing the same here, but was getting better. I think he had a real shot to be a main player with the Oilers this year, and just such a quality person. And we're going to really try. We're reached out with the Bruins in Providence and with Bakersfield and back to Swift Current. We're going to try to create something really special to keep Colby's name in the forefront of hockey. He's that type of Saskatchewan-born guy that just loved the game, wasn't real talented, but the work ethic, and that's what you want in all your kids. He came to work every day, and he'll really be remembered for that.
Incredible. Let me read you a letter. Michael, you'll appreciate hearing this letter about Bob Nicholson. Bobby Nick was a great player and a top scorer in the BCJHL that year. Chad Campbell and Grant Mulvey were our horses, along with Bob. A great leader, dry sense of humor, he smiled all the time. I was 14, just turning 15 when I joined the team, but Nick was always there with words of encouragement. We had a lot of older guys, so it was tough to be a young one. But when Grant got hurt at Christmas time, I got to play on the line with Bob Nicholson. He helped me there. He helped me in the playoffs, all through the season, on the road, at home. I lived with Jim Treliving. Bob, you'll laugh at this because we'll get into that in a minute. But Brad Treliving was 4 or 5, the now general manager of the Calgary Flames, and we played a lot of stick hockey in the basement. I don't know if Nick knew how much I looked up to him. I was a pretty quiet kid, but suffice to say I did, and I still do. He has done amazing things. Please give him my best. You know who that is? That's Tony Curry.
Tony Curry, yeah. You know what, Ron? Tony Curry he was a talented player. He came in at 14 years old, but he did live with Brad at Jim's house, and that's why I say to Brad, when you make bad decisions, that's because Tony and myself used to bounce that tennis ball off your head when you were 4 years old.
Well, it just speaks to your youth and your leadership role. So take me back, Michael, in your story. You go to Western and you're so well educated, and this trail of becoming. I was saying to Bob, when you are as you are shifting power from Canadian Tire to now Empire Company Limited, that means that your power isn't just inherent in the job you have. People seek you out to bring this leadership. Where's it come from for you?
Well, I don't know about that. You're being a little overly kind. I had to go to school a long time because I wasn't that smart, really. So I had to learn a lot. I believe, and I know we're talking sports here today, but I talk sports all the time, and that bringing teams together and working together is the key to any success. So all I tried to do is get the most out of people. If you have a good culture and great values like we have at Empire Company that the Sobeys family put in starting in 1907, it makes it a lot easier. When going through this COVID crisis, it was easy to make decisions really quickly because we just put priorities in and live by our values. Keep everybody safe, stock the shelves, and help charities when they needed it. And they really needed it during this period of time. And that just made it really simple. I'm surrounded by fantastic people, and the executives I work with are fantastic, but never before have I appreciated more the people on the front lines. And that's not just the people in the stores, that's the people in our distribution centers who every day showed up to work. And when a lot of people weren't coming to work, they came to work to serve Canadians, and they felt essential. And I was thinking about it, and it's always good. We all follow the Connor McDavids, and I'm a big fan of Connor McDavid or the Mitch Marners of the world. And often great players like Darnell Nurse or the Zach Hymans, they get credit, but it's times when the chips are down that the people who aren't the superstars all the time, who do all the work, who muck it out, it's time for them to get some appreciation. And there was a cartoon, I could go on, Ron, but there was a cartoon about showing two Sobeys teammates and surrounded by superheroes like Wonder Woman and Spider-Man and Batman and Superman, and the superheroes were admitting these two grocery teammates into the superheroes club. And that to me encapsulates everything, which is it's the people who get up and do the job every day. They're the heroes. It's not I get to go on the show. I get to hang out with you and Bob, but I'm not a hero. They are.
No, it's a big point, Michael, because I've always had kind of this feeling in the back of my head that stay home is a bit elitist, right? Not everybody is in a position to stay home. So your gratitude there is our gratitude, and it's beautiful to watch. One thing, by the way, you mentioned some of your hockey players. You didn't have Leon Draisaitl in your pool, or you'd be winning.
No,
outright.
no. My head of human resources is about to win the pool, and if I'd taken Draisaitl, I would have had a really good shot. I made a big mistake.
Who's your head of human resources, just so I know who to call?
Simon Gagner, big Habs fan.
Okay, good, Simon. I've got to be tapping into you when we do come back with, and I'll get to that with Bob. Don't let me let Bob get away with that one. But the missing ingredient, if it isn't Draisaitl, it's yeast. I have my only question I thought might make you sweat is I keep going to my farm boy and my Sobeys looking for my yeast for Carrie, because she does a great job of that. With that, where is it? What's happening? What's going on with yeast?
There's more yeast and flour and sugar than we've ever seen before. The supplier partners are doing a great job. We keep putting it on the shelves, and the customers keep wiping us out. And I don't think people have been baking like this since the 1950s. And by the way, I got to work out every day because my family we're baking way too much. Yes. But it's not a supply problem; it's a demand problem.
Good. Okay. The playoffs, Bob. I mentioned Brad Treliving there. Brad had a kind of an optimistic interview yesterday with Eric Francis, saying that he thinks there might be some good news coming down the pike a week from now. What are you hearing?
Yeah, you know what? The competition committee is meeting a lot, and that's a real good sign, Ron, when they're meeting. Gary Bettman continues to work with the owners and the head executives of each team and getting ideas with them. But a lot of that goes back into that competition committee. And with them meeting a couple times last week, I think there's going to be something coming. There's a lot out there on the 2014 play-in. Looks like that's the way it's headed, but I'm not sure what that format is. You've seen all the formats. We've talked about all those formats, and now both Gary and Bill are weighing in with the NHLPA. And then safety still is number one. We're looking at the first in phase 2, bringing back what I call pods with 4 or 5 players in them, and then 4 or 5 support people. And they'd stay in those pods, and they would leave the dressing room. Another group would come in, because if one of those players got tested, then you'd remove that pod. So there's so much strategy going on, first of all on safety, and then there's so many other issues around the game with the free agency and the draft and all of that. But first and foremost, trying to find a way to get the players back in the dressing room and really want to finish the 19-20 season.
Okay, the bookshelf behind you, Michael, speaks for itself. I'll ask you about those books, but first I'll show you some books, and we'll see if Bob Nicholson can identify what they all have in common. In fact, the pictures in behind Bob might be the clue to what these books all have in common. What do they all have in common, Bob Nicholson?
You know what? My wife, Lorna, she's done an amazing job. She was a coach in her first life when I met her, and now she's a writer, and she's written so many great stories about athletes. She really does a lot, Ron. As you know, she goes up into northern parts of Canada, into the Aboriginal communities, and reads and works with all of those kids, and just loves it. She's on Zoom calls every day reading to kids, but she's really tried to find a focus on making sure she has values in all the books that she's written, and it's got 2 or 3 more going. And the Cassie Campbell, the Haley Wickenheiser, she's on the Connor McDavid, but those ones, Haley and Cassie, and what they've done in their leadership too. Haley now with this situation, she's got a great relationship with them, but I'm more proud of how she wants to make a difference to young boys and girls, especially underprivileged kids in this country, and she has a real passion for it.
It's funny, Michael, you've met Wayne Gretzky. He was on with Haley Wickenheiser in the very first In Conversation show, and he said, I was embarrassed to be on with her. She's in ER. She's on the front line in hospitals in Toronto, and I'm sitting in my backyard, 72 degrees in LA. Anyway, it was magical for Haley to have that chance to share with Wayne. What's your story on the bookshelf behind you, and who's teaching in the house right now while we're just chatting away?
Yeah, so I like reading, but I can't claim I've read all the books behind me, or I'm surrounded by a bunch of other books as well. My wife's a history teacher in high school, and right now she's teaching upstairs. So we are surrounded by books, most of them history books.
What's her first name? I'm sorry, Michael.
Tracy.
And what has Tracy given you to read? Is there anything that you use to imbue your leadership work?
No, I try to when I try to work pretty hard, and when I read, I like to just read for pleasure. I don't read a lot of business books. Just what read Bill Bryson's The Body, which is an amazing story about the human body, and there's a few references to viruses in there that seem a little prescient right now.
Well, that's, I guess, the other question I have for you is just to put on your retail, as a longtime chair of the Retail Commission of Canada, Council of Canada, the second biggest employer right after healthcare is retail.
Right.
And honestly, COVID-19. So what are you thinking in this sort of suspended disbelief? We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe how great, not just we at Empire Company, Sobeys, how our people have done. I got to compliment our competitors and retailers across the country. And other than groceries and pharmacies and liquor stores, most people were closed, and they had to adapt. They had to do curbside service. They had to expand their e-commerce offerings. And now, as we reopen the economy and try to do it as safely as possible, my thoughts are with all those other retailers that have to take care of their teammates, who have to serve their customers, and they're so happy to be open, but it's not easy to be open. It's not easy to keep everyone safe and keep the shelves stocked. And I'm thinking about the sports leagues as well. We have to deal with 1,500 sites across the country, 1,500 stores, but sports teams have to think about how to keep people safe as well, and they're going through it as well. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do, and my heart's with them.
Well, and that brings us to kids, Bob. Obviously, your work is far greater than just the National Hockey League, the International Ice Hockey Federation. Tell us where your feelings are on what Hockey Canada does for the children's programs and also the IIHF.
Yeah, you know what? With both hats on, Hockey Canada and the IHF, IHF has gone through a lot of interesting, difficult situations right now. We really have to do an audit on where federations are, if they're going to be financially sound enough even to operate. And each country has their different problems. The U.S. has a big problem in that most of the arenas in the U.S. are privately owned. Will they open up? Can they open up? So will their members have places to play? So we're doing those audits at the International Ice Hockey Federation. We're going to have a Congress with 70 countries, Ron, in June. And it's going to be very interesting how we do it through a Zoom type process, and how can we make sure that hockey stays healthy at the grassroots, so kids get to play the dream, and both boys and girls. And I know Hockey Canada is going through what they do in the country now. How can they open in a safe environment for the kids?
Well, great work there. Paul Henderson, who I would love to see in the Hockey Hall of Fame. There's more talk about that, and gosh, it has to. Don't you think, Bob, Paul Henderson should be in as a builder? Michael, you want to chime in on that?
You know what? There was a key moment in our history of hockey, and Paul Henderson made it happen. And there's been a lot of talk about Paul going in. I think it's time. International hockey continues to grow each year, and it all started with the 72 series, and he was the hero of that. I know they compare him to other his NHL stats, but that series was special to the world. Really built the relationship with Canada and Russia.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I think he has to be in. It's time, as Bob says. I remember sitting a little kid on the gym floor with a little television, all 100 people watching that game, and losing our minds. And it was really special. And we got to see it again when Sid scored in Vancouver. These are special times, and Paul Henderson came through for the country, and he was a great Leaf.
This is a book called It's Our Game, Michael McKinley's, forward by Wayne Gretzky, and I'll come to Wayne in just a second. And that's the picture I'm showing you of Paul Henderson, who worked in a grocery store in Lucknow. He met Eleanor, his wife. She came in 15 years old to buy lettuce. He says, "Oh, Eleanor, let me find you two heads in the back room that are better than that." And that's how one of the great marriages and relationships of all time. And then the next chapter is Bob Nicholson. There's this chapter on Bob and his 44 gold medals. Beautiful shot of Nick, as Tony Curry calls him, with the great one and Mario Lemieux. So there's the Lucky Loonie, Bob. Over to you and the story of how you kept it after the women's game in 02.
That's quite a story. I only think it was really Wayne and myself that knew that we put a Loonie at center ice in Salt Lake City, in the U.S. And the women's team found out about it, and after they won the gold medal, they started to dig it up at center ice. And I didn't see it happening. And Wayne was calling me on the phone. He goes, Bob, get the women away from center ice. They're starting to dig up the Loonie. We got to win tomorrow night. Got them away and dug up that Loonie. And it's just a great story. And the Loonie from Hockey Canada, we used to put it in goalposts. We put it in backs of nets. And no one really ever talked about the story. But when it came out in Salt Lake about the Loonie, it was really special. And the best story on it, we gave it to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and you could touch it through a little hole. Well, after a while, they had to put a thin piece of plexiglass on that Loonie because it was starting to wear out. That's how many Canadians wanted to touch that Loonie. So it's it was a special story, and something that everyone will remember. And for myself to have a picture with Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux,
yes,
that was pretty neat.
One of my great regrets, I refereed a preseason game, and the face-off was Sidney Crosby and Daniel Briere, and I don't have a photo. Silly, right? I wasn't. You're never in that mindset, but thankfully that one's well documented. For you, Michael, I saw photos with Wayne Gretzky. Do you have any famous people that you've posed with that you thought, wow, this is a lucky opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, Wayne Gretzky to me is the greatest athlete who ever lived, and and he's a great human being. I remember once going through a tough time, and Wayne was one of the first people to call me. He didn't have to. I remember where I was walking the dog. I'll never forget that Wayne called me, and he's just a special human being as well as the greatest athlete in my mind. And for those two things to go together is pretty amazing.
Is that after Canadian Tire, prior to Sobeys?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, he called me when Don, so he called Don too. That's Wayne Gretzky. Well, Bob, when he picked that team for 02, Theron Fleury had been going through a rough time. Eric Lindros had his shoulder and head blown up by Scott Stevens. Michael Peck had been in a contract squabble. It's almost like he found a reason to string hearts together that way, didn't he?
Yeah, he's absolutely amazing that way, Ron. And there's so many stories like Michael and yours that he just does. And it's a natural thing for him to do, going to see kids in the hospital. And just when there's an issue, he's ahead of it. It's like when he played the hockey, he knew where the puck was going. If there was someone in trouble, he reaches out. And those selections on the 02 team really brought that team together because of some of the situations those players were in, and it just bonded that team. And he's Wayne Gretzky. There's only one.
Well, listen, we could go on forever, but I do want to reiterate, Michael, your frontline workers are our new heroes, and we never thought that the guy who runs Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl would be less significant than the guy that runs, somebody just helping us out to eat and stay healthy. But that's what's happening with your Empire company. Congratulations on all the work being done, and thank you for this today.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks, Bob.
Good as gold. Our thanks to Michael and Bob. We are off on the holiday Monday, so the next show for us will be next Wednesday, 7 ET, 4 Pacific, with Cassie Campbell-Pascal, Paul Maurice. As always, we'll end with a song lyric today, and it's back to the golden hours of Bob and Michael. I'll stick with you, baby, for 1,000 years. Nothing's going to touch you in these golden years. That's David Bowie. For all of us at In Conversation, thanks for watching, and so long.